Good evening. Tonight, we travel back several thousand years to a land where the horizon shimmered with heat and the Nile moved in a slow, patient rhythm through fields of green. A land of monumental stone, golden light, and long shadows cast by structures so vast, they still seem impossible. When most people think of ancient Egypt, they imagine pharaohs draped in linen and gold, priests whispering to the gods, and pyramids rising triumphantly against a blue desert sky. The story often feels grand, almost effortless, as though these monuments simply appeared, summoned by divine command. But behind every gleaming pyramid stood thousands of ordinary hands. Hands calloused by rope and stone. Hands coated in limestone dust. Hands that rose before dawn and worked beneath a relentless sun. Tonight, we will move gently through their world. We will begin not with a king, but with you as a laborer. In the shadow of a pyramid still under construction, we will feel the weight of the blocks, the dryness of the wind, and the steady rhythm of a life defined by repetition. Then, we will shift our gaze upward to Ramses II, one of Egypt's most famous rulers, whose name was carved into stone as deeply as any monument. After that, we will explore the enduring mystery of how the Great Pyramids were truly built. The debates, the archaeology, the quiet persistence of unanswered questions. And finally, we will step inside the royal court into a world of perfume and ceremony to see how differently life unfolded for those at the top of this carefully ordered society. So settle in. Let your breathing slow. Imagine the desert stretching out before you, vast, pale, and shimmering in the distance. And in that distance, rising steadily, stone by stone, a pyramid. Imagine yourself waking before the sun. The air is cool for now, surprisingly so. The desert at dawn carries a brief softness, a moment of relief before the day begins to press down with its full weight. You sleep in a workers' village, not far from the construction site. Not a slave camp, but a settlement of laborers. You are part of a rotating workforce, summoned when the Nile's annual inundation has submerged the fields. You rise from a simple mat. Your muscles already ache. The pyramid is not yet complete. It stands as a stepped mass of pale limestone, rising higher each month. Ramps snake along its sides. Wooden sledges wait in neat lines. The day ahead will be long. You eat before work. Breakfast is modest, coarse bread, thick and slightly gritty, perhaps some onions. Maybe dried fish if supplies allow. Beer is part of your daily ration. It provides calories, hydration, and a steady rhythm to the day. The food is simple, repetitive, necessary, and then the sun rises. At first, it is beautiful, a band of gold spreading across the horizon, illuminating the Nile and the distant palms. But beauty fades quickly into heat. By mid-morning, the desert has become an open furnace. You join a team assigned to move limestone blocks from the quarry. The stone itself is pale and surprisingly smooth when newly cut, but it is heavy beyond imagination. Each block weighs several tons. Alone, you could not shift it. But you are not alone. Teams of men grip thick ropes. Wooden sledges rest beneath the stone. Someone pours water on the sand ahead to reduce friction. A foreman calls out instructions, not shouting in cruelty, but steady, firm, insistent. You pull. The rope digs into your palms. Your shoulders strain. The sledge lurches forward inches at a time. The rhythm becomes everything. Pull, step, breathe. Pull, step, breathe. The desert wind carries limestone dust into your nostrils. It coats your skin. It settles in your hair. By midday, your lips are dry despite the beer ration. This is not the romantic image of ancient Egypt, often painted in museums. There is no golden glow here, only effort, only repetition. You pause briefly in the shade of a ramp wall. Shade is precious. Even a narrow strip feels like a gift. You drink again. The beer is warm, slightly sour, but deeply welcome. And then you return to the rope. Injuries are common. A slipped block can crush a foot. A misjudged ramp can send stones sliding backward. There are physicians nearby. Evidence from workers' villages shows broken bones that were set and healed. But healing takes time. And time means lost labor. So you learn to move carefully, to watch your footing, to trust the rhythm of your team. The pyramid grows slowly, painfully slowly. Each block must be placed with precision. The outer casing stones, polished limestone, will one day gleam in the sun, reflecting light like a beacon. But for now, it is scaffolding, dust, and unfinished geometry. You may never see the pyramid completed. Construction spans decades. Pharaohs plan monuments that outlive them. Your contribution is a layer, perhaps only a handful of blocks in the grand scheme. Your name will not be carved into the stone. But that does not mean your work is meaningless. Egyptian society is built on Mat, the concept of cosmic order, balance, harmony. Building the pyramid is not simply labor. It is participation in divine stability. At least, that is what the priests say. And perhaps you believe it. At night, when the air cools and the stars appear in astonishing clarity, you sit with your fellow workers. The Nile murmurs in the distance. You know that inside you will rest the pharaoh, a living god, they say, whose soul will ascend to join the eternal stars. Your labor helps secure that journey. Still, belief does not ease the ache in your back. Rations are distributed carefully. Bread, beer, dried fish, onions. Archaeological evidence suggests these laborers were not starved slaves, but organized crews. They had housing. They received medical care. Some were even buried nearby with modest honor. Yet comfort is relative. Your day is defined by the same rhythm. Lift, haul, place, repeat. The desert does not change. The sun does not soften. The stone does not grow lighter. And yet, over years, something extraordinary happens. The pyramid rises. What once seemed like an impossible dream becomes a visible fact against the horizon. Travelers approaching from miles away see it first as a pale shimmer, then as a geometric certainty. And you, though anonymous, have shaped it. It is a strange paradox. You are small in the shadow of the monument, but without thousands like you, it would never stand. So when modern visitors gaze upward and wonder how such a thing was built, they often imagine slaves whipped under cruelty. The reality is quieter, harder, more human. It was built by men like you, men who woke before dawn, who ate coarse bread, who pulled rope until their hands hardened into permanent calluses, who lived and died within sight of a structure meant to last forever. And in the vast stillness of the desert night, after the heat has faded and the stars wheel overhead, you lie back on your mat. Your body aches. The pyramid stands unfinished. And tomorrow, before sunrise, you will rise again. As the years pass and the pyramid rises stone by stone, it becomes impossible not to think about the man for whom such monuments were built. So now, gently, we shift our focus. From the laborer straining against rope and stone, to the pharaoh, whose name would be carved into temples across the Nile Valley. Ramses II, often called Ramses the Great. He was not a pyramid builder in the traditional sense, but he was something equally enduring, a builder of image, of legend, of permanence. Imagine him not as the colossal statue you may have seen in museums, but as a young boy in the royal palace. He was born around 1303 BCE into a dynasty already well established. His father, Seti I, was a capable and ambitious ruler. From an early age, Ramses was groomed for power. There was no uncertainty about his path. He would rule. As a child, he would have walked through palace corridors cooled by shaded courtyards and stone columns. He would have smelled incense drifting from temple altars. He would have heard scribes murmuring as they recorded tribute and grain tallies. His education was careful and deliberate. He learned to read hieroglyphs, a skill few in Egypt possessed. He learned military strategy, chariot handling, the complex etiquette of court life. He learned how to speak as though the gods themselves stood behind his words. Because that, in essence, was the pharaoh's role. He was not merely king. He was divine. When Ramses became pharaoh in his early 20s, he inherited not only a throne, but an expectation to preserve Ma'at, the sacred balance of the world, to protect Egypt's borders, to ensure the Nile flooded in due season. His reign would last an extraordinary 66 years, one of the longest in Egyptian history. And during those decades, he built. Temples rose along the Nile under his command. Statues of himself, towering, serene, impossibly calm, were erected from Nubia to the Delta. At Abu Simbel, colossal seated figures of Ramses were carved directly into the rock face, gazing outward over the river. Their expressions are peaceful, almost gentle. But behind those statues was calculation. Ramses understood something profound. Memory is power. If your image is everywhere, then you are never forgotten. You become woven into the landscape itself. And so he commissioned more monuments than nearly any pharaoh before him. It was a kind of immortality through architecture. Yet Ramses was not only a builder, he was also a warrior. Early in his reign, he faced one of the great military powers of the ancient Near East, the Hittite Empire. The two civilizations contested control over territories in modern-day Syria. The most famous encounter was the Battle of Kadesh. You can imagine the scene, though we will do so gently. Chariots racing across dusty plains, the shimmer of bronze weapons in sunlight, the tension of two massive armies meeting in uncertain terrain. Ancient inscriptions describe Ramses as a heroic, almost solitary figure, abandoned by his troops, yet single-handedly turning the tide of battle through divine favor. But history is more complicated. The battle likely ended in something closer to a stalemate than a clear victory. Both sides claimed success. Yet Ramses had the story carved into temple walls as a triumph. Over and over, the same scene repeated in relief sculpture. Ramses towering above enemies, drawing his bow, protected by the gods. The repetition is almost hypnotic. It is propaganda in stone. But propaganda is not always falsehood. It is emphasis. It is shaping perception. Ramses ensured that his version of events became the enduring one. Eventually, Egypt and the Hittites negotiated one of the earliest known peace treaties in recorded history. The treaty was inscribed in both languages. There is something strangely soothing about that detail. Two ancient powers choosing parchment and stone over endless war. Ramses even married a Hittite princess to seal the alliance. And so the warrior became diplomat. As decades passed, Ramses aged. His statues, however, did not. They remained eternally youthful, broad-shouldered, composed, divine. Meanwhile, the real man experienced what all humans do, the slow changes of time. Arthritis likely stiffened his joints. Mental problems may have caused discomfort. His body, preserved in mummified form and studied millennia later, reveals signs of aging and wear. But his reign did not falter. He fathered many children, over 100, according to some records. His sons and daughters filled the palace halls. The royal court must have felt bustling, almost overwhelming at times. Imagine the contrast now. The laborer you inhabited in the previous segment rises before dawn, eats coarse bread, and pulls stone beneath the desert sun. Ramses, meanwhile, wakes in chambers cooled by thick stone walls. Servants bring linen garments. Perfumed oils are applied. Priests await his appearance. And yet, in a subtle way, both lives are defined by rhythm. The laborer's rhythm is physical. Pull, step, breathe. Ramses' rhythm is ceremonial. Audience, decree, offering, procession. Both are part of a system vast and carefully balanced. Ramses lived into his 90s, a remarkable age for the ancient world. He outlived many of his sons. He saw generations rise and fade within his own lifetime. When he finally died, he was mummified and placed within a grand tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Rituals were performed to ensure his safe passage to the afterlife. His heart was left within his body, the seat of consciousness and memory, to be weighed against the feather of Mate. And though tomb robbers would disturb his resting place centuries later, and though his mummy would be relocated for protection, his name endured. Carved into stone, painted onto walls, repeated in textbooks and museums. Ramses understood permanence, but even he, with all his monuments, relied on others. On quarry workers cutting stone, on laborers hauling blocks, on scribes recording achievements, on priests chanting prayers. Power at the top is visible, but it rests upon countless invisible hands. And so, as the desert wind moves across temple walls and colossal statues gaze eternally toward the horizon, we are left with a quiet truth. Even the greatest pharaoh depended upon the steady rhythm of ordinary lives. And speaking of steady rhythms, there is still a deeper question waiting in the sand. A question that has echoed for centuries. How exactly were the greatest pyramids built? As the sun lowers over the Nile and shadows lengthen across the desert plateau, we arrive at one of history's most enduring questions. How were the pyramids truly built? Not in legend, not in myth, but in stone, rope, and human effort. For centuries, travelers stood before the Great Pyramid of Giza and simply assumed something extraordinary. The structure is vast. Its base covers more than 13 acres. Its original height rose nearly 146 meters into the sky. The precision of its alignment with the cardinal directions is astonishing, even by modern standards. It feels impossible. And when something feels impossible, the human mind begins to fill in the gaps. Ancient Greek writers speculated wildly. Medieval chroniclers imagined forgotten technologies. In modern times, some have even suggested alien intervention, as though human ingenuity were not enough. But archaeology tells a quieter story, a human story. The Great Pyramid was built around 2560 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. Unlike the later monuments of Ramses II, this pyramid belongs to an earlier era, the Old Kingdom, sometimes called the Age of the Pyramids. Imagine the plateau at Giza before construction began. A vast, rocky expanse overlooking the Nile floodplain. The river shimmered in the distance. Quarries nearby provided limestone. Across the water, fertile land supported a dense population of farmers. Each year, the Nile flooded, and during those months of inundation, when fields lay beneath water, agriculture paused. Thousands of workers were available for state projects. This seasonal rhythm is essential to understanding pyramid construction. The builders were not chained captives toiling endlessly. They were organized labor crews, often divided into teams with names like Friends of Khufu or Drunkards of Menkaure. These names were found scrawled in red ochre inside hidden chambers, informal marks left by proud workers. It is strangely comforting to imagine them, laughing, naming their teams, leaving graffiti in spaces no one expected would ever be seen again. The logistics were immense. Quarries provided limestone for the core. Finer Tura limestone, used for the outer casing, was transported across the Nile. Granite for internal chambers came from Aswan, hundreds of kilometers south. Transportation relied on boats and sledges. Recent discoveries have shed remarkable light on this process. In 2013, archaeologists uncovered papyri at Wadi al-Jarf, the diary of an official named Mirror. His writings describe organizing shipments of limestone along the Nile to Giza. His entries are methodical, calm, almost mundane. He records quantities, travel times, work shifts. There is something deeply reassuring about that. The greatest monument of the ancient world reduced to daily notes. Transported stone, docked near Khufu's horizon. No magic, just planning. But the question remains, how were the blocks lifted? Many theories have been proposed. Straight ramps extending from the ground up the pyramid's side. Spiral ramps wrapping around the structure. Internal ramps hidden within the core. Each theory attempts to reconcile weight, angle, manpower, and practicality. A straight ramp, for example, would need to be enormous, almost as large as the pyramid itself, if it were to maintain a manageable incline. A spiral ramp seems more compact, but leaves little archaeological trace. Some researchers now suggest a combination of methods: an initial straight ramp for lower levels, then internal or zigzagging ramps as the pyramid rose higher. We may never know with absolute certainty, and perhaps that uncertainty is part of the monument's quiet power. When you stand before the Great Pyramid, you feel not just its scale, but its silence. It has endured sandstorms, invasions, centuries of erosion. Earthquakes loosened them. Later builders repurposed them. What remains is the core, layer upon layer of limestone blocks. Inside, narrow passages lead to chambers. The so-called King's Chamber, constructed of massive granite blocks, sits near the heart of the structure. Above it are relieving chambers designed to distribute weight, an elegant solution to the problem of pressure. There is no elaborate decoration inside the Great Pyramid. No vibrant frescoes, no carved narratives, just stone. Quiet, austere stone. It feels almost monastic. And this simplicity raises another question. Why build something so immense? The pyramid was not merely a tomb. It was a statement of cosmic order. Its shape, a geometric mountain, symbolized the primeval mound that rose from the waters of chaos. At the beginning of time, it was architecture as theology. Each block, placed carefully into position, contributed to more than a burial chamber. It contributed to a belief system in which the pharaoh's ascent ensured the stability of the cosmos. These spaces may be structural features, unfinished chambers, or something yet unknown. The pyramid still holds secrets, and perhaps it always will. There is something soothing about that idea. In an age where so much is documented instantly, where information flows constantly and answers feel immediate, the Great Pyramid remains partially inscrutable. It stands, it waits, it refuses to explain itself entirely. And as night falls across the Giza plateau, the pyramid's edges soften in the fading light. The desert cools. The wind quiets. You can almost imagine the workers long gone, their footprints erased, their voices carried away by time. What remains is stone. Stone arranged with patience, discipline, and astonishing human coordination. No lasers, no extraterrestrial architects. Just rope, wood, water, and thousands of steady hands. And yet, for all its grandeur, the pyramid was only one part of Egyptian life. Because while workers labored in dust and mystery surrounded the monuments, there was another world unfolding simultaneously. One of ceremony, fragrance, silk-soft linen, and carefully choreographed power. And now, as the desert cools and the pyramid fades into silhouette behind us, we step away from stone and dust, and into shade, into stillness, into the ordered elegance of a royal court along the Nile. Imagine yourself no longer as a laborer hauling blocks beneath the sun, but as someone within the orbit of the pharaoh's residence. Not quite royalty, perhaps a scribe, a minor official, or an attendant, close enough to glimpse power, but not quite holding it. The palace is not a towering stone fortress like the monuments. Royal residences were often mud brick, painted in bright colors, surrounded by gardens and pools. Water channels reflect the sky. Papyrus reeds sway gently. Date palms cast long shadows across courtyards, paved with cool stone. The air smells different here, not of dust and limestone, but of incense, lotus oil, and freshly baked bread. Servants move quietly through corridors. Sandaled feet make soft sounds against polished floors. Linen curtains ripple in the breeze from open courtyards. The rhythm here is different. Measured, ceremonial. The day begins not with hauling rope, but with ritual. Priests enter private shrines within the palace to present offerings to household deities. Small statues are bathed, anointed with oil, dressed in fresh linen. Incense smoke rises in thin, graceful spirals. Order must be maintained. Mat must be preserved. Even the pharaoh, divine though he is considered, participates in this ritual rhythm. He appears before officials in carefully staged audiences. His headdress is adjusted precisely. His kilt pleated evenly. Gold jewelry rests against his chest, catching light with every small movement. There is no rushing in this world. Movements are deliberate. Words are chosen with care. If you serve as a scribe in the royal court, your day unfolds in quiet concentration. You sit cross-legged with reed pen and papyrus scroll. Grain shipments are recorded. Tax levies documented. Correspondence drafted. The scratch of reed against papyrus becomes its own gentle music. Outside, in reception halls, foreign envoys wait. They bring gifts: lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, cedar wood from Lebanon, ivory from Nubia. Their garments are different, their languages unfamiliar. Yet inside these walls, they bow to Egyptian authority. Diplomacy is theater. Power is displayed not through shouting or chaos, but through composure. Imagine the midday meal. Servants carry platters of roasted fowl, figs, dates, lentils, flatbread. Wine, far more refined than the workers' beer, is poured into delicate cups. Musicians sit nearby with harps and flutes, producing melodies that drift softly across the room. The palace does not echo with laughter so much as murmur with conversation. Even pleasure is contained within decorum. Beyond the central halls lie private chambers. The queen's quarters are adorned with painted walls, scenes of marshes filled with birds, lotus blossoms floating gently upon painted water. Perfumed oils sit in small alabaster jars. Mirrors of polished bronze reflect candlelight. Royal children are educated carefully. Tutors teach writing, mathematics, religious texts. Young princes learn chariotry in shaded courtyards. Princesses practice music and ceremony. Everything has a place. Everything follows a pattern. Yet beneath the calm surface, tension always exists. The court is not free of ambition. High-ranking officials vie subtly for influence. A well-timed recommendation to the pharaoh can elevate a family for generations. A misstep in etiquette can quietly end a career. No one raises their voice, but every word matters. And so life within the palace is not defined by physical exhaustion, but by vigilance. You must remember names, titles, alliances, genealogies stretching back decades. You must bow at the correct angle, speak only when invited, step aside at precisely the right moment. Even in luxury, there is constraint. The pharaoh himself carries immense weight. Though he sleeps upon fine linen, though his meals are abundant, he is bound to ritual as surely as any laborer is bound to rope. Festivals fill the calendar. The Opet festival sees statues of the gods carried from Karnak to Luxor in grand procession. The pharaoh participates publicly, reinforcing his divine role. Crowds gather. Incense burns. Musicians play. For a moment, the boundary between ruler and ruled softens. All participate in reaffirming cosmic order. But when the festival ends, routine returns. The palace grows quiet again. Night falls. Oil lamps flicker gently along corridors. Guards stand watch at entrances, their spears resting lightly in practiced hands. The air cools, carrying faint scents of water and flowering plants. You retire to a chamber lit softly by lamplight. Outside, beyond the palace walls, the Nile continues its steady flow. Farmers rest. Laborers sleep, Somewhere in the distance, the silhouette of a pyramid cuts into the starlit sky. And in that contrast, between mud brick palace and stone monument, between linen robes and rope-burned hands, the structure of Egyptian society becomes clear. It is layered, interdependent, each level supporting the next. The laborer pulls stone beneath the sun. The pharaoh commissions monuments to ensure eternity. The court sustains order through ritual and administration. And above them all, the desert remains patient and unchanged. As we gently step back from ancient Egypt, consider how these lives, so distant in time, share something familiar. Rhythm, repetition, the laborer rising before dawn, the pharaoh appearing before priests, the scribe bending over papyrus, the desert wind moving across stone, each life unfolded within its own constraints, some beneath the weight of limestone, some beneath the weight of crowns. And yet, thousands of years later, the pyramid still stands, not because of magic, not because of myth, but because ordinary people woke each morning and did what was required of them, stone by stone, day by day. Now, as you rest comfortably, far from desert heat, far from hauling ropes, far from ceremonial duties, the past feels both distant and strangely close. The pyramids endure. Ramses' statues remain seated in quiet dignity, and the wind continues to move softly across the sands of Egypt. Let your breathing slow. Let the image of the pyramid soften in your mind, a shape against the night sky, still, silent, enduring. And with that gentle image, you can allow the story, like the desert wind, to fade quietly into rest.